Hi everyone, welcome back to Crochet Rocks. My name's Tracy, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this super cute mosaic hexagon. Now this one, I've made it in two colours of teal, a dark and a light one, and this is just as it comes out, but I will show you ways of making your centre smaller. If you want to do a magic ring you can, or there is another way. Now this I've made into a square before. I've done several mosaic squares and variations, but this one I'm going to show you how to do it with two colours and doing 2 rows of each colour. I've made several squares, like I said, and I will link them at the end so you can see how it works up making 1 row in each colour. It drastically changes the whole thing. So that is obviously a square, but you just need to transfer that over to making the hexagon. It's exactly the same principle. So also, if you make this a little smaller, it makes a lovely coaster. But this particular one, I'm just going to zoom out, does pucker a little bit. And the reason for that is because the spike, because of this, we're going down to this stitch here obviously, and it does pull it down, so it has this kind of curving effect. But you could block it if you wish, or if you're making a blanket and you're sewing these together or sewing them with other hexagons, so they're not all the same, then this will obviously pull it out, and the weight of the blanket will pull it out nicely. But just looking at it like this, it does have this star effect. Sorry about that, a lorry has just gone by much too fast. Hope you didn't hear that too much. Anyway, it does have this kind of dipping in effect, but that's because we're dipping down. So I'm going to show you how to do this, and for this tutorial I've got 2 really inexpensive double knitting yarns, but you can make this out of any weight yarn as long as you use the corresponding crochet hook. But this is just inexpensive yarn from a local store called Pound Stretcher. It's Yarn Fair Tootsie, and it really does work up lovely. I've never had any problems using this yarn. It works up like an expensive one does. It's just amazing. Now the price of this particular one at the time was 69p. I don't know how much 69 pence, I don't know how much that is now, if it's gone up or not. I know that their prices went up a little bit. It might be 79 pence now. A little while ago they were half price of everything in the store, which was amazing, but I didn't buy any because I had too much already. So I'm going to show you in these colours, and hopefully they do show up nicely. Now when I made this one, I started with the light colour first, and I'll do that again. So I'm going to start with the white, and I'm using a 4.5mm crochet hook, and I've got a pair of scissors handy. And unless you work your ends in, I always do, you're going to need a darning needle. I haven't got one with me for the purposes of this tutorial because it's only ever just showing you one. I never actually show you me using it, well, very rarely. So you need to make a slip knot to start, unless you're making a magic ring, which of course you can do. I have a tutorial you will never find an easier tutorial than mine to make your magic ring, so I will pop that at the end as well as the squares. So I'm just going to make one the way I normally do. Now for a granny square I would normally chain 4, but this is a hexagon and we're putting a lot more in that center ring. Obviously it doesn't make any difference if you're using a magic ring, but with this one you can close it up quite tight if you want to, and I'll show you how. So I'm going to chain 6, and that's a yarn over and pull through, simple as that for a chain. I'm going to do 6 altogether, and then I'm going to join that. It's quite a large hole, but we need it at the moment. I'm going to join that by going into my very first chain and slip stitch in, and then we've got this hole that we can work in. Now it does seem huge, and it works up, and you saw the finished article, it working into it makes it baggier. but there are ways we can close that. So I'm going to chain 2 to get me up to the right height for my next stitch, which is a UK treble. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and that is a US double crochet. I'm going to yarn over, go into the center of the ring, yarn over and pull up a loop. So we have 3 on our hook. We're going to yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. So that's our stitch. That's the only stitch we're going to do all the way through. Well, slightly, maybe there is another. We'll see. I'll give you the option. Now I'm going to do one more in that same space until I now have a cluster of 3 with my 2 chain to start with. I'm going to chain 1 and I'm going to do another 3 in exactly the same space. If I go ahead of you, just pause me and catch up with me. I'm going to do another 3. I'm working over my tail, you see, that's quite important. You need to do that. And chain 1. There we go. So I have 2. Now this part is, if you're used to making granny squares, is very similar, but we're not going to stop at 4. We're going to have 6 lots. So we're going to do that again, working over my tail. Got my 3rd one, grab that. There we go, get him out of the way. And chain 1. Now it's getting quite tight there in that ring already. All you have to do is by holding your ring and that tail and just pull that slightly over and bunch it up. Now you've got lots of big space to work in again. Lots of big space. So I'm going to do another 3. And one more chain. How many have I done so far? 1, 2, 3, 4. I felt like I'd done more. Sorry, just had an itchy nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. I need a total of 6, but I'm not going to finish with a chain. Whereas I'm putting a chain between these, but I won't end with a chain. Again, if it gets tight, you just pull it over slightly, but remember to hold the tail and just pull it over. And my last set of 3, if I've gone streaking ahead, just pulls me down. Okay, so there we go. That's our last one. I'm just going to pull it over slightly so that it's not kind of going over here. So we've got a chain space in between all of our little clusters of 3. You can't see it. I don't chain in a baggy way, so you can't see them that well, but they are there. There's my chains in between. So we're going to have the same distance between this one, but we're not going to do a chain, because if I chained and I slip stitch into here, I'm there and I don't want to be there unless I'm the sort of person who wants to turn their work, which I'm not. I hate turning my work. I don't like the back of the stitch at all. I'd much rather see the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this top chain. There's the first chain that I did, the second chain. I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. So I'm now going to yarn over and pull through both those loops on my hook. So that is kind of a UK double crochet or US single. And it's given me exactly the same amount of space between my clusters. Now, depending on the stitch I'm doing, depends on the stitch I'd put between. But for this one, it's a UK double or a US single crochet. Now this round, I'm not changing colour. If I was, when you see my Mosaic granny square where it changes every round, you might want to do it that way. So if I just change my colour, or whether I don't just change my colour, I do the same thing. I put my hook into my space between my clusters where I'm dead centre. So I put my hook in there, I bring up a loop, and now with 2 on my hook, I'll do 2 chains. So 1, 2. And that just puts this little bit here. So when you change colour, it won't look odd. But I do it anyway as a matter of course. So I'm going to do 2 more. This counts as my first stitch. So I'm going to do 2 more, which will give me half a corner and make our granny spiky hexagon seamless. Okay, So now in each of our spaces between, we're going to put a corner. If you're used to doing granny squares, I'm just going to pull some yarn out while I talk. If you're used to doing granny squares, you'll know what I'm talking about. So this corner there's our space between our three. We're going to yarn over and do our cluster of 3 that we've not just the same as we have been. And I'm going to do 1 chain, and in the same space another cluster of 3. That creates the corner. So if you're familiar with granny squares, you know exactly what I mean. Now I'm going to do a corner in every single chain space between our 3s. So I'm going to do another one here. Hit the thing with my hook. I'm getting a bit excited. So do a cluster of 3, 1 chain, and another cluster of 3. So now we are making our sides by making corners. And now I've completed this one, I'll pull out my yarn a bit and I'll show you what I mean. So now we're making corners, which is creating a side. And underneath, this is our first round. That row is where we're going to go into in the next one, creating the spike. So we're making a side. Okay, so what I'm going to do is in each of our chain spaces between our clusters of 3, I'm going to do a corner, and then I'm going to catch up with you when I've done this one, and I'll show you how we finish off our last one and how we change our colour. Okay, so here we are back at the first one with our half corner. So we're going to go back in here and we're going to do our last 3, which is the other half of that corner. That does kind of creep over, as you can see. So I just pull it slightly apart, and now I'm going to do exactly the same as I did before, closing this one with a UK single crochet, but I'm going to change colour. So I'm going to put that down for a second. I'm going to get my new colour out. I'm going to snip this yarn off and move it to one side and bring in my new colour. Just pull out some yarn. Okay, I think I've got a little bit pulled out now. So how do we do this? Okay, so I'm going to go into my top of my 2 chains. So there's the first one. It's very difficult to see on white, isn't it? Possibly not the best colour I could have chosen. So if you want to, you can go into the top 2 stitches like this, but sometimes I find it creates a little separation. Not always. Struggling to get hold of my curly yarn. And I'm going to change colours by pulling that through and completing my stitch with the new colour. Now I'm going to turn my work over, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull on this here and cinch it down. Just cinch it down a bit. And then I'm going to tie this. And I know there are some people who hate this part where I tie it off, but I've had a few that have come adrift in the past, and I always tie them now, once bitten and all that. And I usually work my ends in as I go, but I won't today. Now, while I think of it, our centre is fairly big. You can see it's not as big as my original. My original one seems quite a lot bigger because it's probably got heavier. But because we've still got this tail in situ, if we tug on it, it gets smaller. So we can control whether we want just a small hole like this so that it kind of is in keeping with these, or we can get rid of it altogether by giving it a good hard tug. So that's another way of making your centre nice and neat. Okay, so I'm not going to work over my tails. I'm not going to confuse you, but we are now, I've actually gone in the wrong place there, haven't I? See, mistakes can happen. So here we go. Finish off my stitch. I never go in that part, you see. Hang on, got too much now. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go into my top chain and I'm just going to change the colour again. Here we are. And do, no, not my chain. I'm going to go into, it's because these tails are in the way. I'm going to go into my space, yarn over and pull it up. And now I'm going to do my 2 chain, just as I did on the previous round. And it puts this colour down there. Otherwise, you don't have it. And it kind of looks a little weird sometimes. With something like this, it actually bunches up quite well, so you don't get to see too much of this part here. But I always find if I go down there, it hides it nicely. So I'm going to finish off by doing my 2 stitches to complete the half of my corner. And I worked over the yarn a little bit there to get it out of the way because it was getting in the way. So this is what I mean. If you cinch it down, I messed that up a little bit. I didn't cinch it enough because I went in the wrong place. So now we're on the side and we're going to make our first spike side. So first stitch we do will be as normal, going in there, just making our first part of a normal granny side. Now we're going to go down here. Now you can do 2 things. You can either yarn over and do a front post around this center stitch here. So you insert your yarn at this side, you come out at that side, and you yarn over and you pull it up a long way. And then you complete your stitch exactly the same as usual. And that makes your granny. But there is another way, and I'm going to give you the choice because it does pull it and dip down. You can yarn round twice and then do your front post. Go around the stitch exactly the same, yarn over and pull up still, even though you're doing a longer stitch, and you can yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. Now it does seem mega long, but you need it, trust me. Now I prefer to do that because this stitch doesn't have that long, vulnerable stitch that can get a pull on it. It's actually twisted in, if you like. So now I'm going to finish off my set of 3 by going back into my normal granny space and finishing it off. So that's how we make the spike. And I prefer, as I say, to do the UK double treble or US treble crochet instead of one big long treble or double. So now we've got to the corner. We do our corner exactly the same way as before. Nothing different. I was going to try and find myself a nice baby pink to show this, and I've got lots of it. And do you think I could find one ball? All I could find was one small ball that I wasn't sure if I had enough, or a giant ball of yarn that I didn't want to use yet. But all of the pink disappeared quite strangely. So this is how we're making our corners. I will make another corner with you and then we'll stop and we'll look at a full corner because this one only has half a corner on it. So we'll look at our full side, So we're going to start the same, making our first stitch as normal. I'm yarning round twice and I'm dropping down to this group here and I'm going to go around this third one. So I'm going to insert that side, come up that side, yarn over and pull up, still pull up, and complete my stitch by going through 2, going through 2, and going through 2. I don't think it was very wise to have a red hook, but hopefully you can see that okay. So I'm going to finish it off with my 1 further stitch to make my 3, and we'll do this corner and then we'll stop and we'll have a look and see what it looks like. If I go ahead, you know by now, just pause me. Oh, I need to pull out a little yarn. I'll do one more, I think, in there. And pull out my loop, and that is our full side. So there you go. That's what it's looking like. It kind of makes them look a little bit like hearts in the corner there. but these are spiking right down, and I find using the UK double treble or the US treble crochet puts way less stress on that than doing a normal I couldn't remember if I'd used what one I'd used on here, but I still use, and as you can see, I still use the double treble or the US treble, and it still has that pulling down going on. So you really do need to pull up a little way as well. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do our corners as normal, and in our side we're going to do our one normal stitch, our elongated double treble or treble crochet US, finish our side and do a corner. Now I'm going to go all the way around, and I'm going to pause it and catch up with you once I've got to here, and we'll finish it off together. Okay, so I've gone all the way around, and it's at this point I want to point out to you that this original tutorial was going to be for a coaster, and this is where I was going to finish, and I was going to just do a row of UK doubles or US single crochets in this white colour all the way around, and that's how I was going to make my coaster. But I decided, what would it look like if I carried on a bit? So we're going to do another row, and I'm going to finish off my corner just the same as I have before by doing my last 3 in there. Pulling it over because it's bunching, and now I'm going to finish off by going into that top of my second chain and doing a UK double crochet or US single, and we've got our completed. So with this one I did 2 rows of my first colour, 2 rows of my second, and then I did another 2 rows with the beginning colour. So we'll carry on, and that's what we'll do to make sure that it looks the same. Of course it will. So I'm going to insert my hook, pull up a loop and pull it through. So I've got 2, and then I'm going to do my 2 chain, and then my next 2 stitches as usual to create my half of the corner. But as you can see, even though we've been pulling up, when you lay it down, it's still got this curving in because of our corners, I guess, as well. That's part of it. So now we've got 2 places to go into on our sides. So we're going to go in and do our first stitch, yarn round twice, and we're now dropping down to the previous corner, to that third group of 3, I mean. We're going to go around that middle one, exactly the same as we did before. We're going to yarn over and pull it up, definitely pull up, and we're going to complete it by going through 2, yarning over and going through 2, and going through the next 2. And then we're going to finish that one off with our stitch. Now we've got one next to it, exactly the same. We're going to do another side. Yarn around twice. Of course, if you're, just doing the normal treble or double crochet in the US, you just need to pull it up a heck of a long way, or you will get a lot more dipping than I've got. Okay, so that's what it's looking like. It will look quite fetching with these colours. It's a lovely kind of contrast colour. Just making sure, and I've gone in the wrong place, haven't I? It's because it's so dark and trying to look through a camera, it's not that easy. So I've just made sure, and that was, thank goodness I did. I was in the wrong place. So I'm going to do my corner as usual, exactly the same as I have before. And we'll do one more side so that we can see what a complete side looks like. So that's another one in there. It's hard to count when you're talking. Okay, so let's do our side again. Do our first stitch as normal. I've come out a bit now. It's getting bigger. I think I don't need to be zoomed quite so much. It gets a little difficult to see. There we go. So we're going to yarn round twice. We're going to drop down to this one. Go around that stitch. Yarn over, pull it up and complete it. by going through 2, 2 and 2. Complete our cluster of 3. On to the next one. Always going around the center of our 3. We'll just get this corner done and we'll have a look at it, making sure I'm in the corner this time. Pull out even more yarn. I always find that these spike stitches, they do take a lot of yarn. I guess because you are dropping down, but it seems odd to me that you use more yarn. There we go. Right. So there we are. You can see it's more puckering than it was. Let's get those tails under so they don't confuse. But you can see why you have to pull up those sides, because it does kind of pull in. But there we go. That's how it's looking now. I love it. I really do. It's got a special kind of look. It feathers, if you know what I mean. It feathers it out. So I'm going to carry on going all the way around, and I'll catch up with you when we get back to this half a corner. Okay, so I've got all the way to the end. Oops. And I've just got to finish off my 3 in here. I've got enough yarn, I cut it off. Oh yeah, I do. And then I now just need to go into here and bring in my new colour, which I'm having trouble seeing, so bear with me a second. I've got my hook in, bring in my new colour. Just snip this off. It's a bit big. Move it out of the way. I feel a sneeze coming on, so I do, if I just suddenly go, you'll know where I've gone. Bear with me. That was a loud one. Good job I paused it, guys. It would have blown you away. So anyway, bringing in my new colour, well, my white. I'm going to turn it over. Let's snip these off and get rid of them. They're in the way and untidy, and they've been worked over. It's not like, you know, I'm actually know what I'm doing with this. If I'm going to make it into anything or not. So I'm just going to tie off my colour and bring in my new, as I did before. Pull out some yarn before we go, because I haven't done that yet. There we go. There we are. So I've got my white. Let's get rid of the tails. They do get in the way a bit. Now, between my clusters of 3, in my gap, so there's 1, 2, 3, it's in here. I'm going to put my yarn and bring my white through and do my 2 chain, and then I'm going to finish off my corner. Now, before I go on, I want to show you what my coaster looked like. And here it is. So obviously I haven't sewn the end in, but what I did when I completed this row, I went through the back loop of the stitch only, so that it made this little ridge going along. You might need to block it. It is quite hexagon shaped. It's not too much of a dip. Wouldn't take a lot of putting right, but that would make a nice little coaster or a nice little hexagon for a blanket. But obviously we're carrying on. We're going another 2 rows of white, and that will end up the same as this one. Now, if I decided at that point to edge them all in white, for instance, I could make a blanket of all these different colours in one. So, or I could just have a colour theme. So I'm going to carry on going all the way around my side, exactly the same as I did before. So I'm doing my first stitch in there, yarning round twice, going to the centre of my previous row's corner and pulling it up, It's obviously in the center of your row, center of your side. That's where it is way more important to pull it up. So this is the outer edge, this is the middle, this is the one you really want to focus on when you're pulling them up. Round twice. This time we've got this post already. We're going to go around the back of this. Okay, we're going to grab our yarn and we're going to pull it up, because this is the where we're finding it going into a bow, if you like, bowing down. And then we're going to finish the third stitch. So it's much easier to find where you're going into in that row. So we're going to go into this one. We've got another one along this side. Yarn round twice. Into the center of our 3, which is there. Pull it up away. Not as much as in the middle. And that will hopefully negate the dip in if you pull up more in the middle. Let's finish our corner. Almost there. Last one. I'm going to pull it out, and you can see by pulling up that one even more, you've got a nice straight edge. So that's the key to it, is to pull up here, but pull up way more in this one here, because obviously you're dipping down much further with this this one here, and that will hopefully stop that sagging a little bit. I don't think you're going to stop it completely because of the nature of spiking, even though we're doing a taller stitch, but by making this one pull up even more, you're going to even that row out even more than you have already. So I'm going to pause it. We've seen how. I'll do one more with you. I'll do one more side around that, because it is a slightly different side. So we'll do one more side like I did before, and then I'll pause it and meet you at the end. I didn't pull up very much on that one, but it's on this next one I really need to concentrate on pulling it up. So it's round twice, round the back of this one that's already raised, pull it up significantly and complete the stitch. One more in the side, and then we'll do our normal one here. Still going to pull up some, because it is a spike after all. If you can get your hook round, pull up a little way. I need to pull out my yarn already. Obviously didn't pull out enough all that time. We'll complete the corner, and we'll get the beauty of a completed side. No, I didn't pull out enough that time on. One more. And there we go. So now you can see how it's looking with a completed side. By pulling that one up, it's making a significant difference. So I'm going to carry on going all the way around. You can see it puckers. It's just the way the stitches work out, but it will even out, and you can block it, and when you attach it, it will change it. So I'm going to go all the way around, and I'll catch up with you when I get back to the start again. Okay, so I made it all the way around, and this is how it looks. It starts to pucker an awful lot more the bigger that it gets. So you've got options now with this design. You can either just keep going and keep going in the same colours, 2 rows of each. Obviously, I've only done one of this last row. Obviously, you will take quite a lot of yarn to get around the bigger it gets, but it would look really, really nice. Or you can make lots of smaller ones which have far less movement and puckering in them. You can make them as coasters, or you could leave it like this and just have one row like this at the edge and then join them, or you can carry on and make them with 2 rows. and then perhaps a border or an invisible join. I've also got a tutorial for a really invisible join, and I'm not sure if I've got enough suggested videos at the end to put that there as well, but I'm going to call that a day with this particular seamless hexagon. I was going to say square then. How I always end off is to do one chain and then slip stitch into the top of my first, is that the chain? 1, 2, yeah, there we go. I just slip stitch into there like I would ending anything else off, and I snip off my yarn and pull it through. And the reason on my very last round I end with a chain is because then the gap is identical. But as you can see, it is seamless and it does kind of pucker a little bit, but I think as the weight grows, the weight would pull that out. Or it's not insurmountable problem. You can block it and it would look okay. This one has another round and it's not that bad. You can see it's only a little bit that it needs pulling out. But I hope you like that. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe, everyone, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.